Hi, I'm Tom Stevenson, and welcome to MS Project Made Easy. Today, we're going to be looking at resources, how to apply resources, and I'll point out 8 different things that you should really think about when you're applying resources to a project and costs to a project. So I'm going to start out with this little bathroom project that I've worked with in previous sessions. And we've got our activities, we've got our predecessors in place, and so we've got a nice critical path. Everything is well connected, there's no open ends here, and we want to assign resources because every activity that you have on your project, somebody has to do it. So one of the simplest ways is to make sure that we assign resources so we know it's covered and we can hold people or contractors, consultants, etc., accountable for the time periods. And more importantly, we can set that up to manage it effectively. So if we have our schedule developed, and you know what, you don't even have to have that part done, we can develop a resource sheet. So Microsoft Project has a number of different tables and a number of different sheets, and that's half the battle, is maneuvering between the different sheets and tables. And I've got other videos on that if you're interested. If you click subscribe, you'll see my MS Project playlists, and you can take a look at some of those, and I put some links at the bottom in the description as well. But if you slide along to the left, and that's usually the way I like to switch between screens, one of the ways. So you slide to the left, you right click with your mouse, and you can see the list of different screens that you can choose. Well, for today, we're going to look at the resource sheet. So I'm going to click on that, and I've typed in a bunch of different resources. It's as simple as who is it that we want to assign to our project, and really just typing them in and pressing enter. And so I've just entered a bunch of them. And you'll see over here, actually, I'd already done this, but I put in imp, sub, employees, subcontractors, and SUP for suppliers, just to show that you can categorize or group your resources. So here I'll put imp for employee. Okay, so and you don't have to do that. It's just something that's nice. I'll show you a little bit later that you can sort of sort things by groupings. So by default, everything in MS Project, and this is one of the points that you want to remember, is that there are 3 types of resources that you deal with in MS Project. So there's 3 types of resources, and they're categorized as work, material, and cost. And I think sometimes it's a little bit confusing because material sounds like, oh, so I should be listing out all the materials. Well, you don't really want to list out all the materials, and that's not really where I would put it anyways. Material would be more something that would be measurable. Something like in construction, linear feet, square feet, cubic yards or cubic meters, or something that's of measurement that you want to put in there. So for example, in this case, I've got Bernardi Supply Drywall. So they're a supplier, and maybe I want to buy my drywall by the square foot. So I'm going to put material, and then I'm going to type in the square feet. It popped up there, but it won't pop up for you because I had it in there before. Square feet, dot enter. That just means how this will be measured. So as a material, then what's the rate? And you'll see the standard rate. And right now, all of these say hour, except this one, because we've changed this. So this is key to you understanding resources, is that there's 3 types, and how you assign it will limit how you can apply costs on your project. So you have to determine, am I paying this person by the hour? Am I monitoring them by the hour? Or am I subcontracting it and there's going to be a cost associated with it? Or am I measuring it like material, like cubic meters, cubic yards, etc.? So in this case, square feet of drywall. And let's say that I'm purchasing it out at 50 cents a square foot. So I'll click on that, 0.5, and there we go. So that'll be applying 50 cents per square foot. If I put material and I had concrete, maybe I would have cubic yard and I would say $120 a cubic yard. Same deal. So you're just deciding how much per cubic yard so you can monitor this on your project. And today we're just looking at applying resources. Later we'll look at updating schedules and then seeing, well, what actually happened with our costs and updating costs and reviewing where's the differences and the variances. But for today we'll look at assigning resources. Now, you might not want to monitor your project for cost. You might want to just assign people to it. If all you want to do is assign people to it, all you have to do is fill out the resource names in a list and you're good, right? You can then just assign people and you're not monitoring costs or any of that kind of stuff. And a lot of projects, that's the way they'll do it. They may have other mechanisms for monitoring the costs on a project. But if you want to add resources and costs, this is the way that you need to look at it. So you do not have to put costs, but you may want to. The other thing is you may want to, with this, look at how you apply the cost to a resource. So we've got here work, and I'm going to put an hourly rate, project manager. So maybe I'm going to put an hourly rate of $80. Site super, maybe I'm going to put an hourly rate of $80 as well. Carpenters, maybe I'm going to put an hourly rate of $70. And for ABC Plumbing, you know what? They're a subcontractor. So I'm going to contract that work out. I'm going to put them as a cost. Same with the electrical. Same with the HVAC subcontractor. So I've got costs, work, and material. And these ones here, I think that all of them are costs except for the last one. So I will just grab this little corner here. And if you grab it and pull it, it will just copy that down for you. And the last one, maybe labor, I'll put at $60 an hour. Okay. And I'm just throwing numbers in here. You know, the burden rates may be more or less depending where your jurisdiction is. You know, in our jurisdiction, it'd probably be $110 for a PM and a site super. And when you're talking burden rate, it's, you know, all of their costs associated with it, not just what you're paying that direct employee. So we've got here the standard rate. So we've assigned that. You notice if I go over here and I try to type in, it won't let me type in any of my costs. So that's because I put this as a cost and we assign cost in another way. This though, once I assign it, it will calculate how many hours that person is working by that amount. This overtime rate, you can actually set Microsoft, you can get really into it. I'm not going to get into that today, but you could actually have overtime rates. So if you paid time and a half, you could put $120. And then if they're working beyond certain hours in the day, that would kick in and calculate at the higher rate. You could also assign a cost per use. So every time that you assign something, maybe there's a setup fee or a delivery charge or something of that nature. In this case, it's not really applicable for our PM site supers. It could be for drywall though, for example. Every time that you assign drywall, maybe you're going to have a delivery as well. So you'd add $60 and every time they deliver it, it's $60. You'll also see here accrue at. This is very important if you're adding costs because how do you want to pay the money out? Do you want to pay the money out at the beginning? Do you want to pay it out at the end? Or do you want to pay it out as it progresses? So usually workers, the closest you're going to get to reality is to pay it out as the work progresses. So that would be prorated. So if you're paying them every 2 weeks, you'd probably put prorated. If you are looking at a subcontractor, likely you're not going to pay them till the end of what work they're assigned to. So you can think about this in a lot of ways because you would pay, say they were working on an activity and you assign them to that activity and the activity is say 15 days long. Well, maybe you know you're not going to pay them any money till the end of that 15 days till they've done something. Well, that's fine. If you put it at the end, if you want to do a cost flow report, which we'll do in another session, it will actually show you how the money is leaving the company. So by assigning it the way that you plan to pay it, it gives you a realistic idea of how that money flows out of the project. So I'm just going to grab this little corner here, pull this down. It's a quick way of just doing things quickly. And maybe, you know, the drywall, when they deliver it, maybe they want a certified check, or they're going to make you pay with your MasterCard there. So maybe you want to just put it at the start. Okay, so that's just differences in the calculations. Now, you can even assign special calendars. We talked about calendars in a previous video, but you could assign, if you created a calendar, a special calendar for this resource, you could assign that calendar to them, and then they would follow it. So, for example, if your project manager is taking 2 weeks off in November and your project started in September, then it wouldn't schedule that PM or count the time during that time that they're away. So you can do that. You can get really detailed in what you want to do, or not so detailed, as I mentioned. If you just want to fill this out, that's as far as you need to go if you only want to monitor for resources. So know that there's 3 types of resources. Now, I'm going to slide to the left, and because none of this has affected anything so far. So I'm going to slide to the left, right click, and go to Gantt chart. By the way, you can also go to this view bar, and it leaves up this bar here that makes it quick to go between screens, whatever you prefer. Sometimes I don't like it because it takes up a little bit of space, but there it is. So that's the view bar. All I do is right click and you see view bar. If you want it to go away, you click it and it goes away. So I went to the Gantt chart, right? So I'm in the Gantt chart now. I left the resource sheet and nothing has happened with my project. And if I actually switch screens over here, there's actually what we call a cost screen. If I go to the cost screen, you'll see I've got 0 costs so far. So no costs have been associated with this project. Now, if I go to the entry screen again, if I go assign resources, it brings up the assign resources dialog box. Now you can assign resources in a lot of ways. Microsoft projects, like most scheduling programs, you can do it like, I don't know how many ways there are. I usually do it this way because I've got a lot of flexibility. You could pull this to the right, the vertical bar that separates the screens. You could assign resources this way. This doesn't give you much, though, latitude in assigning things like materials and units and things like that. So it's very limited, so I don't usually do that. I usually use this that I could see what resources are assigned to the activity, so it's helpful that way, but not for the actual assigning. And the other way that's often done is task. You go to the task tab, you go to details, and it should split your screen, and you can assign resources down this way. And by this split screen, a lot of people do like to work in the split screen. You can right click over here, and there's different screens within the split screen that you can actually use. Like it says resources and predecessors. It is predecessors and successors. It's just changing this information, but we probably want resources and predecessors. So there we go. And that gives you that information where you can assign resources, etc., to the project. You can adjust this split screen up or down if you want. And to remove it, you can click details again, and it will disappear. Sometimes, depending what you're doing in that split screen, you have to click it twice. But for now, to simply assign resources, I would just go to the Resources tab, bring up the Assign Resources box, and then I would start assigning resources. So for example, if I want to assign the project manager, if I know that the project manager is going to be, let's say, 50% assigned to this project. It's a small project, actually maybe because it's just a bathroom. Let's just say the project manager is 20% assigned. So I'm just going to type in 20 and press enter. And so that assigns that project manager to the whole project, but 20% of the time. So 20% of their overall time is assigned to this project. So it basically took that 51 days, and these are working days if you recall from previous videos. So these are working days, 51 working days. Everything is indented underneath here. 51 working days, and it multiplied that by the hourly rate that I had for the PM. I think I had $80 for the PM. So if I actually take my phone and open up my calculator here, and I clear this and I go 51, there's 8-hour days. It's using the standard calendar, so it's 8-hour days. 51 times 8 times 80, that gives me 32,640. And if I times that by 0.2, that gives me $6,528. So that's where that amount comes from. So it's always good to know what the amount should be and where it comes from, because sometimes the way you enter information, it could be giving you a distorted number and you might not know it. So it's really good for you to have a handle on that in your mind. The other thing I would say is if you are then going to assign, if you have a really good work breakdown structure, that's one of my points here, is to make sure you have a well-developed work breakdown structure. Because the nice thing is, somebody that's going to be assigned to this area of work, you just assign them to there. You don't assign them to each activity. Because you got to be careful when you assign resources. If they overlap, it counts them twice. So you don't want them to be counted twice, right? So you have to be careful how you assign the individuals to it. So a site super, for example, maybe I've got the site super on this, and maybe the site super is not going to be even there all the time. So I'm going to assign the site super 50% of the time and press enter. And that's doing the same thing, 9,920, but it's only on 31 days. So it's only counting 31 times 8 times 80 times 50% of that. And that's where this amount of money is coming up from. So that's how it's calculating it. So you got 31 days times 8 times 50%, or times $80 an hour times 50%. Either way it'll work. And then you've got $9,920. So that's how that's assigning that. And then perhaps, and this is like a lead carpenter, so they're going to be there most of the time, but you know what? They're probably not going to be there all day when the plumbers are doing the electrical and the HVAC and that sort of thing, because it's a small job. So then you would individually assign, like rough-in plumbing. You click over here, you go ABC Plumbing. Now remember, we made the plumber a cost. So in that case, what we have to do is, it's not work. We can't just say 50%. It won't even let us type anything in there. I'm trying to type, it won't. Only if it was work. Remember, we made this out of the 3 categories: work, cost, material. We made them work. So this is down as cost. So I'm going to put down, what do I pay them when they're done? Because remember, we said at the end, these are short. This is a short project, so it's not really making a difference. But let's say that we're going to pay them $4,000 when they are done this activity. So we click assign, and now it's assigned $4,000 to ABC Plumbing. Now the other thing is, maybe then we've got ABC Plumbing doing the finishes, like the install toilet, shower, the basin, and the shower controls. And so maybe at that point we're going to pay them $3,000. And we're going to click assign. So we've just assigned them. So that's how you apply the actual cost when they're under the cost heading. You put their cost. Now, this should total the contract amount that I have hired them to do. So I've got 4,000, I've got 3,000. Those are the 2 things that they need to do. Same thing with the electrical. So I've got to go to my electrical subcontractor. Wherever they are, there they are, DEF Electrical, and I got to say at the rough-in, I'm paying them $2,500, not $25,000. So you got to be careful about that. It's so easy to mix that up. So that's why if you're doing cost loading, you got to be really on the ball and really detailed about it. If you're just wanting to assign a resource, like say that I wanted to assign let's see, trim, And let's say that I was just going to assign, uh, pick one that's not work here. So let's say I was going to assign a Canada Glass to trim as an example. I just go assign. It just puts the name there. That's what I was saying before. If you just want to monitor for names only and you don't want costs, then you just don't have any costs down on any of the things in the other sheet, and it'll just do the names, and then you can just monitor by that without monitoring costs. But it is nice. You really get a good handle of where your costs are coming from, and then when you update, you see any variation in time frame. It does those calculations. And if you had on, say, your own forces, like your carpenters working every day, and you planned it to take 12 days and it took 15 days, it would show you the variance of those 3 days. So then you could start asking, why did it take 3 days longer? Did we estimate it wrong, etc.? So it's very, very helpful when you do that, but it is more detailed and work-oriented. If you're just starting out, just assign resources and get used to it and how that part of it works, step by step, or bird by bird, as I like to say. So yeah, you could continue then adding these various resources onto your project. Now I did have one for the drywall, so let's see. Let's go with install drywall, because I wanted to show you the Bernardi building supply one. So let's say that we had 1,000 square feet of drywall. So if I put Bernardi building supply, well, you see how it allows me to put units here. I can even pull this to the side a little bit. I'm going to put 1,000, right? And then I'm going to press enter or assign, and see how it puts square feet beside it, because that's the unit we called it. It'll put whatever you typed into that column. It doesn't know square feet meters. It just knows the abbreviation you put in that column, but it does know 50 cents a square foot, and that's why you're at $500. So it did that calculation there for you. So that's how we assign work. That's how we assign costs, and that's how we assign materials. So the other thing I wanted to point out is what we call effort-driven scheduling. So that's another one of our points here. We want to make sure that we understand how effort-driven scheduling works. So I'm going to just look at maybe install ceramic tile and grout, and let's pretend our carpenter is going to do it. Maybe it's not our tile person. So I'm going to assign carpenters. So how long is this? This is saying 4 days, right? So I'm going to assign one carpenter. By the way, if I say here 100%, that means one carpenter. So I'm going to assign. So it puts carpenters, it's at 4 days. Now if I go out and I come back and I go, oh, wait, what am I doing? I need to have 2 carpenters here. If I go and I change this, watch what happens. So several things are going to happen here. It has 100%. I'm going to click here. It goes to 200%. Okay? Now, watch what happens to the days when I click this over here. See how that went from 200%? The cost stayed the same, but the time was cut in half. That's effort-driven scheduling. The program's assuming you're adding somebody else. When you went the second time back to it, it says, oh, they want to add somebody else. Oh, well, if it's taking 4 days for one person, it should take 2 days for 2 people. That logic doesn't always work, so you got to be careful. You might have said, no, I meant it originally, I wanted to be 4 days. And I want 2 people for all 4 days, but that's going to double my cost, right? So that's going to double my cost. When I go back there, it doubled my cost. So there is a distinct difference, but you got to know that if it cut it short, you got to be watching for that. And then you got to decide, do I want it to be like that? Because effort-driven scheduling might be true. It might have made sense. Well, we add a second person, so it's going to take half as long. But at a certain point, it makes no sense. Makes no sense, if I said, all right, so we've got 2 people doing the tile and grout, and it's going to take 2 days. Oh, if we had 4 people, then it should take 1 day. If we had 8 people, then it should take half a day. If we had 16 people, it should take a quarter of a day. In a bathroom? I don't think so. So you've got to watch that, right? Effort-driven scheduling just works up to a point, and then you start losing efficiency very quickly, at least in construction-related projects. Okay, so now you see this little Martian guy, the little red guy at the side. Well, we've assigned 2 carpenters. So if I go back to my, I'll just close this for a sec. If I go back to my resource sheet, you'll see that carpenters is in red. Well, that's because we said maximum. We can tell Microsoft Project how many we have of something. So we said we only have 1 carpenter available. 100% means 1 carpenter. 200% means 2 carpenters. 300% means 3. 3,000 means 10. 3,000 means 30 carpenters, right? So the only way we can fix that is either go back and reduce it to 1, which would lengthen our time with effort-driven scheduling, right? Because I think I left it at 4 days. That would lengthen it to 8 days. Or I can say it's all right, we're getting another carpenter, we're hiring somebody else, or we've got somebody else available. If I do that, that removes it. If I added another carpenter again at 300% and I said only 200, it'll show red again. It's a flag for you to say, hey, you've assigned more than you have. You can get into that in more detail than this with histograms and other areas. We'll go into that in another video. In this top left corner, this is another one of the points. Review cost sheets in the resource sheet. So you can go to the cost corner here, and there's just a list of sheets that you can look at in this view too. Today we're going to look at cost. So this is where I can see what every resource in total is costing. Remember I assigned ABC Plumbing twice? Well, those 2 assignments add up to this, right? So it's showing me what my total cost. So I should be able to check these, and these should fit my budget for my project. And if they don't, then I've got to go back and I've got to adjust and see where I made a mistake. But that is very useful for me to check. Is this totaling and are each individual ones making sense for the budget I have on the project? Later in other sessions and tutorials, we'll look at when we update how we can check what's our budget compared to what's our actual and our variances that are occurring as we progress on the project. That's where that can come in very handy if we're going to that extent. So I hope that this is making sense for you to look at the cost. You can also in the main screen, the entry screen, go to the cost view here. Remember we did that at the very beginning and there were no costs assigned? Well, take a look now. This bathroom so far has $30,000 assigned to it. Pretty expensive bathroom. Although some bathrooms, master grand bathrooms, that's very easy to accomplish. That and more. 100,000 is not out of the question on some of them. So we have that, and we would of course be looking at this because we've got this for the whole project. Does this add up to our overall budget? If it doesn't, we check. Some of you may have noticed this fixed cost column here. It's not really where you want to start adding all your costs. It's just some extraneous cost that for whatever the reason it doesn't fit the resource sheet that you maybe want to add something there too. You can do it and it'll definitely add up into your amounts, but don't get into the habit of putting all your costs in here. It's not really intended for that purpose. If you look at it, it shows any non-resource task expense, so like extraneous type things that you may want to add to a particular costing. So it gives you another avenue to do that, some peripheral items if you something outstanding you want to add to it. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, go to my entry view. We've checked, so we understand effort-driven scheduling. That was my number 1 point. We know the 3 types of resources: materials, cost, and work. We can assign resources easily with the assign resources box here. So that makes it easy for us to do. We can also remove them if we want, right? You click and you can remove. You can review the cost sheets. So we looked in the resource sheet to ensure totals match our totals. We can review the cost sheets in the entry view. We just did that in the entry view. We talked about having a well-developed work breakdown structure, because the nice thing here with a well-developed work breakdown structure is it tells me costs at each heading. So I know what my costs are at each heading as I assign things. So if you had a bigger project with multiple levels, you could check each area of work, like substructure, like building systems, and even more definitive details. So it's very, very helpful from that perspective. so that we know how to load resources on a summary task and how we can even use a percentage, like 20% assigned to this project. That's why the percent is good in the other one where we list max. All right, so it's a particular project manager. They'll be 100% maximum, but we're only assigning 20% of their time to it. So that's helpful that way. And watch for over allocations of resources so that we see the little red Martian. We know that we've assigned more than we said we have, and then we can resolve the issue that way. So I hope today's session gave you a good overview of how to assign resources. I have more detailed videos and a listing of tutorials. So if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, just click subscribe. And also if you click the bell, you'll be notified of updates as they come in. And you'll see under my playlist, I have MS Project playlists where you can see the details. And in the description, I put some extra videos that you can see as well. So I'm Tom Stevenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and I hope that you found this helpful. Bye for now.